This is a list of 2,000 common nouns that you should learn in order to be able to understand the language better. Remember that vocabulary is probably the most important thing in language learning, because if you don't know the words, you cannot understand and you cannot speak the language if you don't know the words that you need to use, right? So you should always be trying to learn new words. And we learned the 2,000 most common verbs, so basically all the verbs in the language, or almost every verb in the language, the first week. And verbs, I would argue that are more important than nouns, but we also need to learn nouns. Now, nouns tend to be a lot more context specific, and not all of these will be all that useful. And then a lot of nouns that you will need, you will not find them here, because you will need nouns from a specific subject you're interested in, and those context specific words from there will not show up here. So nouns, there's a lot more of them, and you need to learn way more of them, all right? But this is a good start. So what you should do here is pretty simple. The plan is to memorize at least 100 of them a day with mnemonic associations. If you've been practicing this skill daily for at least 15, 20 minutes, you should already be decent at it. So you're going to create mnemonics. It's pretty easy. You got the word here, you get the translation. I know it's not 100% accurate. It's computer generated, all of that. It's AI. Yeah. It gets the job done. Because if you're also listening to native speaker podcast at this point, whatever mistakes it might be, or maybe it translates this into a verb and it should be a noun or whatever. Those things will happen, but it shouldn't be a problem. All of that, as long as you are listening to native speaker audio regularly, you will immediately realize, uh, like if something's wrong from here, you'll immediately realize, and then you learn it the right way once you get exposed to native speaker content enough, authentic content. The goal of this is not to learn to speak the language, to understand and speak the language really well just by learning this, right? These sentences. The goal is for you to learn enough words and sentences as fast as possible so that you can move on to native speaker content as soon as possible and you can use those. All right. So it's not perfect, but it's the fastest way to get there. This is like a fire hose of information. You absorb as much as you can, as fast as you can, and you move on to native speaker content. That's why we did the verbs, we did the adjectives, as many of them as possible, as fast as possible, and now the nouns. But you should already be decent at understanding the native speaker podcast if you've been doing the uh, reading the transcripts before you listen to them. All right, so let's get started. Like I said, 2,000 of them. Not all of them will be super useful. Most of them will be relatively useful, and that's around 100 and something a day. It's pretty doable because that's 2,000 of them, 2,000 sentences of example sentences, 2 hours of audio. You listen to those audio files for 20 hours. So the whole thing from start to finish 10 times. And if you've been creating mnemonic associations, by the time you've listened to the lines 10 times from start to finish, you'll understand pretty much everything what they're saying here. It doesn't mean that you'll be able to use all of these sentences and all of these words in conversation when you need them. It doesn't mean that you know them actively, right? For that, you should, you would need more reps as well, but also practice them actively, active recall and all of that. But for our goal here, which is improving your comprehension, yeah, listening to the whole thing from start to finish 10 times, the first couple of times while reading it and reading the meaning, right? After the mnemonic associations should be more than enough to understand pretty much everything when you hear it in context, right? So over 100 mnemonics a day plus um, listening while reading and then just simple listening. Easy. Over 100 mnemonics a day, 7 days, that's over 700 mnemonics. That's not 2000, right? You're probably thinking that. And that's because you don't need mnemonics for each and every one of the words. This particular language is Turkish, and it's a very different language from English. But even here, some you can find some cognates here. Like this one isn't, or this one from Arabic. Oh, I recognize this one from Arabic as well. There are always cognates, but if you're learning something like French, German, Spanish, Portuguese, any European language, at least a half of the nouns here will be cognates. So very easy to recognize without even you won't need mnemonics to memorize them. So for those, obviously don't use mnemonics. Context will be enough. Also, because we've been learning the verbs, a lot of this a lot of these nouns will be from the same word families as the verbs. Yeah, organization, to organize. If you've learned the verb to organize, even if it sounds different in that language, right? It's not. Let's say it doesn't sound like in English. It's not cognate, but still, the word organization. Even if you haven't seen it before, once you see it after learning the verb to organize, you'll recognize the noun. That's why word families are so important. So you'll recognize a lot of this anyway. So we start creating we start creating mnemonic associations, and I'll create a bunch of them for you to. If you have been lazy lately and you haven't been following instructions, you should start set a timer and create as many of them as you can. Find something that sounds like the word, visualize it, visualize the meaning of the word, and you create some kind of image. Uh, I'll do some of them very quickly. For example, uh, insanlar kind of sounds like insane. So insane asylum, easy to visualize. People, bunch of people, lots of people. Imagine just like truckloads of people getting brought to an insane asylum. Make it cartoonish, like visualize like The Simpsons or something. Um, Adam, Adam. I don't know why I pronounce that the English way. Adam, man. For man, I always use, I guess, whatever you can think of man, but for me, it's MAN, which is not pronounced man. Is the I don't remember what it stands for. The lorries. It's a German brand. They produce trucks. Maybe you know it as man. I know it as MAN. So and it's got very distinctive like big man sign. So I visualize that, and Adam from Adam and Eve driving one of those. He's naked there and he's driving a big German truck. Day, gun, visualize a calendar, and each one of the days has a gun there because the calendar is in Texas or something. Thing, Shay. Shay was that character from Game of Thrones. I'm not gonna say the word because it's probably not monetizable. I mean, it's a monetizable profession, but it's not very monetization friendly on YouTube. Let's call her Lady of the Night. The midget guy, not the midget, the dwarf guy hires her, and then she betrays him in the end. Uh, she had a weird accent when she spoke English. Uh, so visualize her. If you haven't seen Game of Thrones, uh, just watch it. The first few uh, series, not the last part. The last one, just skip it. And the thing was that film about the alien, like an alien shape shifting alien that was really creepy. It was a really good film. So just visualize that thing's so easy to visualize, and then she is as well. You create a mental image. Child, easy. Chojuk sounds like shoju, which is drink, alcoholic drink in Korea. You visualize a child drinking, which you shouldn't allow your children to drink at all. But, but especially, I don't know. It's pretty hard, like so. Yeah, no, don't do that. But if you visualize it, it's because it's wrong. If something you visualize is wrong, it's well, it's kind of out of the ordinary. It's easier to remember, right? So Jojuk, Mister, by, um, Mr. Smith. Is that the guy from the Matrix? Or Agent Smith? Mr. I'm gonna do Mr. Bean. I like Mr. Bean. And Bay, Michael Bay. Yeah, imagine Mr. Bean in a Michael Bay film with the car chases and explosions all over. Yeah, it's pretty easy to visualize. Um, yeah, I think that's enough. I'm not gonna do too many of them because, believe it or not, it's not when I do it on camera like this. I tend to forget most of them because I'm speaking at the same time, and also I have to do it in English only so that people understand. Otherwise, I mostly use my native languages. Uh, but yeah, normally I do it in silence and just like fully focused. That's the way you should do it, right? Um, Set a timer. Either set a day, like a goal, 50, 100, this many, and you don't stop until you do that many, or set a timer and you count how many of them, how many associations, and you do it in silence, maybe some concentration, like focus music or something, uh, or just whatever. But just do it in silence, right? Don't check your phone, anything. Just until the time runs out, you keep doing this, and you do as many of them as you can. And of course, you won't remember them just by doing this. You will have to then take the example sentences and listen to them. Read first time, just read them while listening, and then after that, just binge listen to them. All right. And if you do this correctly, you will have learned the whole thing. Maybe not in a week. Like, not, maybe you won't remember each and every one of them in a week, but in a couple of weeks, you will remember most of them well. Right. And that's how you memorize vocab. Right.